Good afternoon, YouTube. This is Mark with Waist Deep Wade Fishing, Southwest Florida. I just want to say thank you again to everybody out there who's been so supportive of me. The views are going up, the subscriptions are going up, and I want to thank you all. So today I want to talk about a couple of things, and the main topic today is how to avoid getting skunked while wade fishing the Grassflats. A lot of people go out there and they don't know what they're doing. They go out and they fish 2 days, 3 days. They come back. I'll speak to them. Hey, how'd you do out there? I didn't catch a thing. Nothing. It seemed like the water was dead. Well, most likely the spots that they were fishing while they were out there in the Grassflats were. So today we're going to just discuss a little bit, a couple of things that you should do while you're out there. And I'm going to go right into it. Let's not waste time. So here's the first thing. You need to put yourself in the right spot at the right time. Now remember, 90% of the water holds no fish. Okay? Only 10% hold the fish, aka the feeding zone. You need to find those spots, okay? And how you go about doing that? Put some time on the water. No one can work miracles. What you need to do is spend time out there. Locate the areas, and just keep a mental reminder of where you're catching fish. The next thing you need to do, once you get to that spot, to that grass flat, you need to do a water assessment. And what I mean by assessment is, you need to, see if the birds are around, if they're diving, if they're circling. You want to, look at the current that day. On the tide charts, there's certain apps that you can get out there. Tides for Fishing is one of them. That's going to tell you how strong the current is going to be that day. You could also look up on your local buoys to find out how strong that current is planning to be. You also want to look around and see if there's bait. If there's no bait in the water, why are the fish going to be there? Also, you want to look for structure. And we discussed that in my last video. And you need to look for all those things on the area that you're going to be working for that day. You also need to determine where in the water column are the fish feeding that day. Are they fishing on the top of the water column? Are they fishing at the middle of the water column, or are they fishing fishing on the bottom of the water column? Sometimes trout, well, they'll fish. They'll stay near the top of the water column. Redfish, 90% of the time, they're going to be on the bottom of the water column. Snook can be on the top, the middle, or the bottom. So again, this is all about keeping a log of when you go out to these spots. To find out different trends, on where they're feeding, what time they're feeding. Spend time on the water. Find the trends in the area you fish. Winter trends, spring trends, summer trends, fall trends, tides, weather, types of bait that's in the area at those specific times. Okay, if you want to do this and be proficient at it, you need to go out there and keep logs, of what you're catching, where you're catching it, how you're catching it, why you're catching it. And here's a big one. It's funny. I talk to people and they'll say, "Man, I went out there and that tide wasn't even moving, and I was there for like 3 hours. The tide just stood still, and I couldn't buy a bite." Well, the worst time that you can possibly fish on the west coast of Florida, I'm not talking about the east coast, I'm talking about where I live on the west coast, Southwest Florida, would be on the slack tide. You know what I do? When it's slack tide? I go ahead and take this time to walk myself from wherever I'm at to the shore and have myself a nice shore lunch. So, next thing we're going to talk about, and it's quite important, is temperature. different times of the year, different temperatures in the water, uh, make some fish more active than others. For instance, some fish like snook are very sensitive to temperature. If that temperature gets below 70 degrees, that water temp goes below 70 degrees, every fish, every single snook that you will see up in the mangroves, out on the beaches, okay, they are going up into the rivers, up into the creeks, where the floor, the floor of that river is dark and warm. They cannot stay in water, under 70 degrees. They can die. So as soon as that water changes, and it gets to that, to that 70 degree temperature, well, automatically you're not going to get too many snook on the flats. You're not going to get too many snook working mangrove lines. There's not going to be any snook on the beaches. They're going to be in the rivers. Now, to the opposite of that, the big female snook, once that temperature gets above 80 degrees, those big female snook are going to go move onto the beaches in the summertime to mate. Okay, they're going to go there and gorge themselves on bait, mingle with the males and make some babies. So there's certain things that you need to look for when you're going to go out there, on the grass flats. It's just not going into the water and saying, oh, I'm going to do good today. I'm going to catch myself a slam. I'm going to get myself a trout, a redfish, and a snook. All these factors, all these variables, will determine if you're going to catch fish or you're not. Now, for instance, redfish are less susceptible to cold weather and silty water. A redfish, if that water's muddy, it doesn't really bother them. Whereas if that water is muddy, a trout won't be nowhere near it. You won't see a sea trout in muddy water. A sea trout has to have a high salinity, high salt content, and clean water, preferably around grass. You will never see trout in dirty, silty, muddy water. Whereas a redfish, it could be cold, and that water could be silty. It could be tannic. It could be just a muddy brown. And those redfish, they're not affected by it. Snook can stay in muddy water, as well. They preferably like the salty water as they're getting bigger. They can go into, they are a brackish water fish, so they can go into fresh water. But the clarity of the water doesn't really affect them so much as trout. But, getting back to the trout situation, if there's any dirt and that water is not clean and it's muddy, forget it. There's no trout there. Look for clean water. So that's going to bring us to another topic. Okay, the bigger trout, as they get bigger, when the trout are younger, they'll feed on shrimp, little crustaceans. They'll eat just about anything you throw at it. But as they get bigger, and I'm talking once they get past that 21, 22 inch mark, they're not going to be so, they are susceptible to really freezing cold. But, if it drops down to 65, 64 degree water, they'll still be good. Now in that situation, if it gets that cold and you're out there wade fishing, you want to look for a deep channel. So those trout are going to get off the grass and they're going to go into deeper water, because that deeper water is going to be warmer for them. That's just a little thing I wanted to throw out there. But they still will chew. But just remember, trout need very high salinity. So if you're out there wade fishing and it's dirty, the water's all mucked up, and you can even take your finger and go like this and taste it. And if it doesn't really have a salinity taste to it, and you're hunting trout, get out of there. You're not going to find them. That water needs to have high salinity. The next thing I want to talk about is making sure that your presentation will match, the time of the year. Okay? So, for example, in the colder months, when you're throwing lures, your presentations are going to be much slower. Where, in the wintertime, you would want to throw your lure out, give it a little crank, give it one twitch, count out 2 or 3 seconds, give it a crank, give it a little twitch, count it off 3, 4, 5 seconds, give it a crank. Whereas in the summer months, when it's, or I should say in the warmer months, you want to be moving that bait fast. Those fish are pumped up, they're fired up, they're ready to eat. Spring is here, the spawn is out, they're getting themselves full, they're having sex with other fish, all day long. They're hungry. So when you're throwing lures, at trout in the warmer months, you're going to be throwing more like you cast, let it hit the water, twitch, 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 pause, twitch, twitch, pause, twitch, pause, twitch, 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 pause, twitch, pause. Okay, you want to be working that lure fast, because those trout are going to be, they're out there chasing bait down, and you'll see them. You'll throw those top waters, you'll see those trout come up and smack them. And last thing with that is, when you're out there during those warmer months and you can actually see the bait, the clarity of the water is good, try to match the hatch. Always try to match the hatch in the beginning. If you go out there, try to find a lure that can match the bait that's in the water. Now, if they're not going to hit that bait, then go to the total opposite of that. Use a lure that stands out. If there's a lot of silver and green and white bait in the water, throw, a yellow and a pink out in the mix. Something that stands out to make that fish want to go grab it. Next thing, plan every trip from your experience. Keep logs of what you've caught, where you caught it, types of lure used, time of day, tides, weather, all that. If you do that on a regular basis like I do, 9 out of 10 times that I go out on a